This call is being recorded.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi, Ammar. This is Nashmia.
Hi, Nishmi. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you.
All right, so are you ready for a call?
Yes.
All right, so we're just going to dive right into your second experience, all right?
Okay.
All right, so you were a senior RF consultant here. Can you tell me about your key responsibilities for this role?
Yeah, sure. So this is the one with Verizon, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So with Verizon project, so basically I was working as a consultant through another vendor company. I was working on the EME analysis part. So that's the RF exposure part
Mm-hmm.
that, and like, so basically the scope of work was to um, you know, take measurements in the field
Mm-hmm.
for all, on all of the cell sites that were awarded to us, and analyze the data based on the specialized tools to measure the RF exposure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was responsible for generating reports, identify the areas with issues, and then come up with the solution, like, as per the FCC compliance. So what
Mm-hmm.
happened is that, like on a rooftop, I mean, mostly this project was catered towards the rooftop sites,
Mm-hmm.
because on the rooftop, a rooftop cell sites, have access to the general public as well as, the occupational, field crews. So what happened is that, on any rooftop cell site, as per the regulations, issued by the FCC, there has to be certain signage and barriers if needed to avoid general public accessing those areas, specifically in front of the cells, the cell antennas, as well as the surrounding areas. So there is a specialized tool that we used. It's called Roof View. So this is like a desktop study. And so basically there were two scopes. I mean, one was the field measurement and the other one was desktop study. And then, I used, I had multiple teams going out in the field to measure and collect the data and then send it over to me. And then I will process the data using the tools, doing desktop study, and then come up with the prediction of all the areas where we have high RF exposure. And then, I mean, based on the guidelines provided by the FCC, I mean, I come up with a recommendation and provide a report to the client here, that's Verizon Wireless. So basically, I come up with report per site, give them, okay, these are the existing values, and there are certain areas that needs to be remediated, and what steps they need to take to remediate that. So that was the overall scope of the project.
All right. So, and this is the only project that you were working on here?
With Verizon Wireless, yes, that was the project at that time, yes.
All right. Right, so in your resume, it says that you were here from November 2013 to February 2015, and then it says that the project duration was 4 months. So can you clarify what this is about?
Yeah, I mean, I think that must be like a typo. I mean, that comes out to about 15 months, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I would say, yeah, it was about, 12 to 15 months. I mean, I wasn't working directly with Verizon in their office because, as I mentioned, I mean, that project was kind of nationwide spread out. So we had some sites, in the Northeast, including New York and New Jersey, and we had some sites awarded to us, that were in California. So I had field crews in both of the locations, in Northeast as well as West Coast. And I was working through the vendor company in their office in New Jersey. So so that was the main task for me, to basically lead this project. Um, there were some other tasks that I was doing, but that were not related to Verizon. So I would like to just put Verizon here. That's why I put it in here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, to just, specify exactly which vendor I was working
All right, so the dates are correct, basically.
with. Yes.
All right. Um, so you mentioned that you were leading like a team that was conducting the field studies, right? Can you tell me what the team size was?
In the Northeast, we had four teams. On the West Coast, we had about, yeah, about three to four teams there as well.
Mm-hmm. So you were managing them remotely?
Yes.
Any challenges with that?
Well, the main challenge was to, coordinate the timings and stuff because, from Verizon, we were like, the schedule given to us was not very clear. So,
Mm-hmm.
and we were responsible for reaching out to Verizon field techs to give us access to the cell sites
Mm-hmm.
because they are the one who have the access codes and the keys for the locks and stuff. So coordinating with them was challenging, in the beginning. But we were, I was able to overcome that by like setting up a process, to have like a daily call with them every morning just to confirm, and then the daily schedule as well as the forecasted schedule.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that was one of the challenge. The other challenge was, that internally in our team, it's hard to manage, especially like when you're dealing the field crews that are like on West Coast. So on the East
Mm-hmm.
Coast it's fine, because they're kind of local, but West Coast is a little bit challenging. But we ended up getting another coordinator, on the West Coast as well, that was coordinating their timing and schedules. But from the
Mm-hmm.
technical point of view, they were all reporting to me.
Okay. And could you tell me exactly how many personnel these were, like per team? How many employees?
Overall, I would say about 10.
10. All right, perfect. And then you also said that you were able to identify some areas which were exceeding the guidelines for RF exposure, right?
Yes.
So can you tell me what you recommended for in order to remediate this?
Yes. So basically, as per the FCC, there are very clear guidelines
Mm-hmm.
that we have to follow. Whenever we see any areas where the RX exposure that's exceeding the permissible limit. So
Mm-hmm.
so the recommendations include installing signage
Mm-hmm.
for warning as well as hazardous. If so, there are different levels. If the exposure is really high, then we suggested installing physical barriers
Mm-hmm.
around the close, vicinity of the where the antennas are placed on the rooftop. Um, so yeah, basically, and then also keeping the door locked all the time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, these are few of the the guidelines that are already issued by FCC, and then we were basically I was recommending that as per
All right.
the readings that were received.
All right. And were these implemented then, these recommendations?
Yes, our scope of work was to provide report with identification of areas as well as
Mm-hmm.
recommendations. Actual implementation of these recommendations was not part of our scope.
All right. And did you have any problems at all in identifying these high exposure areas? Was it difficult?
Yes, so for desktop studies is more challenging uh, because I have to review construction drawings. I have to look at the actual physical dimensions of the building,
Mm-hmm.
identifying exactly where the antennas are located on a rooftop. So and the information that I have received from Verizon, at that time was not very clear. Most of the time, the construction drawings that were provided to us were outdated. When we
Mm-hmm.
had field crews going out on the rooftop, they confirmed that the construction drawing is incorrect or maybe outdated, and then things have changed on the rooftop. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, that put me actually behind on the schedule because I was doing desktop studies while the field crews were doing the site audits. So desktop
Mm-hmm.
studies I can do much quicker because that's like a software tool that I was using. But then the information that I was taking as a reference to generate the plots was incorrect. So I had to go back and then fix that. Fix the layout of the rooftop and then rerun the propagation.
Mm-hmm.
So that put me initially that put me behind the schedule. But once we identified that the information provided to us was not accurate, so and not liable, then we ended up reaching out to the vendor and then explain to them exactly what challenges they are we facing, and then basically getting more time from their part to deliver the correct scope. We came up with a plan that we will run desktop studies, but we will not come up with recommendations until we verify that existing configuration or existing layout is correct as per the field crew. So I mean, we had a site audit form that the field crew is supposed to fill out. They're supposed to send it over to us, and then I was basically responsible of comparing that with the information that I used to run the desktop study. So I mean, so that was the process. I mean, moving forward.
All right. And at the end, you were able to complete the project on time, right?
Of course.
All right, perfect. Um, let's see. Hmm. Anything else that you want to add for this? Anything that you were doing alongside, or um, any other challenges that you overcame?
Um, I can't really think of anything else at that time because that was a while back too. Um, so yeah, I mean, not at the time. I mean, I cannot recall anything at this time. Also, one question about my latest experience. I mean, since I've been here at T-Mobile for like over 4 years now. Um,
Mm-hmm.
do you think it's better to keep that project as under one scope, or can we split it in different scopes?
You're talking about your most recent experience?
Yes.
We'll keep it under one experience, but I'll talk about all the projects that you've done.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
especially since you're aiming for full-time roles and not consultancy roles, I don't really want to make it a project-based resume, if that makes sense. I want to,
So is there a difference, like on the kind of role that you're looking for? Like
I'm
like
sorry,
you
what?
know, like a consultant or a full time, does that affect the type of resume that you prepare?
Not really, but when you're aiming for full-time roles and all your previous experiences are consultancy roles that could, for the recruiter, it may be like, maybe you're not used to doing a full-time role. So if I make that even more emphasized by splitting it into projects, I think that won't be like a really good idea because you have lots of mini experiences, right? You have like 10 jobs in the last 10 years, I believe. So if I split that up further also, that'll just increase that whole impression that your
Yeah, that's
resume
true. So
currently gives.
initially, I mean, if you look at the trend, I mean, initially, like, my initial project were smaller projects, like,
Yes.
4 to 6 months, but then, my most recent projects, they are like much longer.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to keep
So,
them that long. I want to make it look like your responsibilities have increased and you're doing a lot more things and it's more like a full-time role. You're leading teams and everything.
okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep, that's fine.
All right. So for this experience then, for the Verizon experience, anything else that you want to add?
No, not at this time.
All right, we'll move on to the RF design and optimization consultant role. This is again at T-Mobile. So you were here for about 6 months, I believe. 5. Right.
Yeah,
So
about
again, was
5 months.
yeah. So is this a single project here that you were doing?
Um, yes, so this project was for the LTE infill. So, and also the new cell sites, that T-Mobile was building in New York. So,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I mean, the main scope was the design and the design part, including, like scoping RFDS CIQs, as well as working on the site turn up and site launch optimization, etc. So all the
Mm-hmm.
responsibilities within these scopes, I already put in my resume. Um, the main thing that I would like to highlight in this one will be the integration of new outdoor DAS, because that was outdoor and in-building DAS, because that was one of
Mm-hmm.
the new, uh, uh, you know, New York market was one of the first market to integrate that at that time, and I was involved in it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Also, 2013, that was the time when T-Mobile acquired Metro PCS.
Mm-hmm.
So integrating Metro PCS sites into T-Mobile network was one of the major projects that I was involved in.
All right.
And in-building and outdoor DAS was a part of it. On in-building, I'm not sure if I included. I'm not sure if I included the in-building subway. I think, yeah, we have to include that in here.
All right.
So, so in New York City, I mean, are you familiar with New York City?
Not really.
Okay. So in New York City, we have a big infrastructure for underground subway system.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, so T-Mobile was T-Mobile was one of the first operators to deploy in-building DAS in those stations.
All right.
And nationwide, that was the first project for T-Mobile that we're doing on such a large scale to deploy in-building DAS systems on the major subway stations, including Times Square, Penn Station, World Trade Center,
Mm-hmm.
Battery Park. So these are the big stations. We turned up almost over, I would say like 30 to 40 stations,
Mm-hmm.
subway stations, working with Transit Wireless. Transit Wireless was the main vendor working with the MTA. So we were working with MTA as well as Transit Wireless to camp on their system and then turn up our T-Mobile technologies on their DAS system. Um, there were a lot of challenges initially because that was the very first time T-Mobile
Mm-hmm.
was integrating DAS into the subway system. So controlling a high noise floor was one of the main accomplishments that we did.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and besides that, working on Metro PCS keep sites, Synergy project. So Synergy project was a project that we did. In Synergy project, what we were doing was, to basically look at all the Metro PCS sites that are in close proximity to existing T-Mobile sites with either higher RAT center or more flexible lease terms, and then
Mm-hmm.
converting them into T-Mobile sites while decommissioning existing T-Mobile sites. So basically replacing existing T-Mobile sites with Metro PCS sites. So that was one of the projects that we did. There were over 200 sites just in New York City for that project.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then, like supporting the design scope, including RFDS scoping, CIQs, neighbor list, integration support, etc. We also had 3 drive test teams that we were managing. Um, so basically scheduling the drive tests for the new turnups, analyzing the drive test data, in Actix and Thames, identifying areas with issues or high call drop rate or high accessibility failures, and
Mm-hmm.
then, coming up with, and then basically optimizing it, using the Ericsson OSS. So that was, another scope on this part. Um, I think like on this project, I've done much more than the Verizon one. So I mean, I would
Mm-hmm.
like to extend this one more because this is just 5 months.
All
I think
right.
I have to put it in for at least like a year.
Okay. So
Uh,
you were basically till May 2013?
May 2014.
So, yeah, 2014, sorry. Okay.
Yeah, let's do
You
that.
do, all right, just just so you know, companies do conduct background checks when they decide to hire you. So, if um, it's up to you, but like just so you know. All right.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, so I want to talk about this a little bit more. You mentioned that one of the challenges for this in-building DAS integration that you were doing was a high noise floor. Can you elaborate on this, and can you also tell me how you overcame this?
Yes, so basically, subway systems are very sensitive. I mean, especially in building DAS on subway, because
Mm-hmm.
subways, like in New York City, they come like every like 30 seconds there's a new train coming up on every station. Like it's very fast moving, and as the subway train, what we have realized was, that when the trains come to the station, the noise
Mm-hmm.
floor increased. And I mean,
Oh. Mm-hmm.
once we turned up the site, we realized that like that there's a specific trend for the noise floor to go up and down. And then we tried to troubleshoot a lot, but then we ended up getting a spectrum analyzer and then going to the field and then measure the exact noise floor. And then we realized that, like on the spectrum analyzer, I mean, we tune into the frequency that we were turning up the DAS, that whenever the train arrives to the station, because of the high noise and like the vibration to the system, because like the antennas are mounted on top of the ceiling, right? So I mean, there's a big influx of electromagnetic waves that comes as soon as the train arrives in the station, and when it leaves,
Mm-hmm.
it goes away. So I mean, because the trains are running on metallic railroad tracks, right? So what happened was that due to that friction, we have seen high spikes on the electromagnetic influx that equates to the high noise floor. And then that's something that physically we cannot really fix because the trains will come and go. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's how the train stations are. That's why the train stations are there, right? So I
Yeah.
mean, we ended up working with Transit Wireless to tune in our parameters, to basically apply additional attenuation and delay values in our systems
Mm-hmm.
that will reduce the noise floor while keeping it in a certain threshold. Of course, like the threshold for the in-building DAS system, especially in subway, is because since this is a special case, it's different than a regular DAS system. So we had some lenient, thresholds to accomplish. But we were able to do that by basically working with the vendor and optimizing the attenuation delay and power settings in the system.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. All right, so that was one challenge. Any other challenges because of the size of this project or anything?
Um, Besides that, I would say um, I would like to talk about more about the in-building, the outdoor dash sites.
All
Uh,
right.
so basically, there was the Metro PCS outdoor dash.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, in Westchester County, New York,
Mm-hmm.
and Staten Island, New York, and Brooklyn, I mean, Metro PCS had a very big footprint of outdoor DAS. When
Mm-hmm.
T-Mobile acquired Metro PCS, so I mean, one of our main tasks was to integrate that DAS system into T-Mobile.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I mean, and that required shutting down existing Metro PCS technologies, including LTE and CDMA. So shutting down CDMA was a challenge because we had to look at the traffic for Metro PCS customers,
Mm-hmm.
come up with a plan how we can transition that traffic onto T-Mobile network, shutting down CDMA technology, and then turn up UMTS and LTE technology on the Metro PCS outdoor DAS system. Since that
Mm-hmm.
was the very first time T-Mobile was deploying its technologies on a DAS system on outdoor, it was a big challenge because we had, because T-Mobile didn't have prior experience working
Mm-hmm.
on DAS system at that time. So we had to work very closely with the DAS vendor that was Crown Castle,
Okay.
Crown Castle, Extenet, and American Tower,
Mm-hmm.
and then working with their DAS engineers to identify the issues. I mean, mainly on DAS system, the main issue was to control the SINR
Mm-hmm.
and to increase the throughput. The SINR and throughput are directly related. So I mean, once the SINR is bad, the throughput will go bad. I mean, so I mean, we had to really pay attention closely to optimizing the SINR in the area, because the DAS system, is like it's outdoor DAS, so the antennas are mounted on top of the light poles, etc.
Mm-hmm.
We had T-Mobile had a lot of cell sites in Westchester and all of these areas, so there were cases where the DAS nodes were like right in front of the macro cell site. So I mean, it was very hard for us to basically. So basically, once we turned up the DAS, there was a lot of RF pollution in the area that was caused by the DAS system. So basically, overall, it was decreasing the throughput
Mm-hmm.
and decreasing the quality of the network. So, I mean, we had to come up with a plan how we can optimize it further. We ended up shutting down some nodes, reducing power on some nodes, and also modifying existing cell sites, in terms of azimuths and power settings to improve the RF environment in the area, and eventually, um, improving the user experience as well.
All right. And for the SINR and throughput, would you happen to know could you like give me numbers for them, how much you were able to improve them?
I mean, SINR, we have, I mean, SINR, I would say improved by 35 to 45%.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and throughput, throughput you can put, I mean, about 25 to 30% improvement in throughput.
25